Today we'll look at inverse functions. Now, the word inverse means opposite of or reverse. So when we talk about inverse functions, we're really talking about inverse operations. A couple of things to take a note of. First off, what is the symbol that will indicate the inverse function? Whenever you see the function notation written with what looks like a -1 exponent, that means inverse. We're not going to use it as a -1 exponent. It's just going to indicate inverse. Now, basically, the inverse of a function with a single operation uses the opposite operation. So if you're looking at a function that is only using one operation, then it's pretty easy to figure out what the inverse is. Take a look at this. Our first example asks us to find the inverse of f of x equals x plus 3. Well, what is the opposite of adding 3? You're right, that's subtracting 3. So we would write f inverse of x is equal to x minus 3. It's just that simple. Keep the x in the same place, but use the opposite operation. In this second example, f of x equals -5 times x. What's the opposite of multiplying times? It's division. So we would write that as f inverse is equal to x divided by -5. I'm using a fraction here to indicate division. Now it's a little more involved if you have more than one operation. So if you do have 2 or more operations, use the following 3-step method. First, replace f of x with the letter y. Way back when we covered function notation, I said f of x and y were interchangeable. Then you will switch or swap the x and the y around. Then last but not least, you will solve for the y. Now let me demonstrate. Here in this first example, f of x equals 2x plus 7. Notice I have multiplied by 2 and added 7. So that's 2 operations. What I'm going to do first is change f of x to the y. That would be my step 1. Then step 2 is to switch the x and the y. So I'm going to rewrite the problem and just interchange the x and the y. And then last, third step, I'm going to take that and solve for the y. Well, to solve for y, I need to move the 7 over. So that's x minus 7, changes its sign. Then I divide by 2 on both sides. So this is going to be my inverse. I would write f inverse is equal to x minus 7 divided by 2. Now if you examine that closely, notice our inverse has a -7. The original problem had a +7. Our inverse is divided by 2. Our original function was multiplied by 2. So again, you will see the symmetry of the opposite operations. Now let's look at one more example. In this example, again, step 1, I will replace f of x with the letter y. So that's my step 1. Step 2, I will interchange and swap around the x and the y. And then for step 3, I will take that result and solve for the y. Now in this problem, I need to move over my -1, so that becomes x plus 1. Then I would need to divide by 4. Gives me y to the 3rd equals x plus 1 over 4. Then last but not least, the opposite of exponent 3 is radical 3, or cube root of 3. So we would say that the inverse function is the cube root of x plus 1 over 4. Now compare the answers. I have cube root instead of exponent 3. Those are opposites of each other. I have plus 1 instead of minus 1. Again, opposite operations. And then my answer, inverse answer, is divided by 4 instead of having multiplied with 4. So that is your inverse.